says the author uses the word veritable in line 41 to what? So we go back for another vocab and context question. We'll just read from the top of that paragraph since we haven't looked at it yet. And it says, the first time the fairy appeared, we heard after tea in the hall the hoarse notes of a horn. We rushed out in amazement. Down in the hall, talking to an aunt of mine who was staying in the house, stood a veritable fairy in a scarlet dress, carrying a wand and a scarlet bag, and wearing a high-pointed scarlet hat of the shape of an extinguisher. So, he's thinking that he's seeing a real fairy. This kid has some issues. And we want to look at the answer choices to see what veritable fairy. So in his mind, this is a real fairy. But we know that this is not an actual fairy, especially if you go on to read the rest of that paragraph. So A says to indicate that abracadabra was indeed a real fairy. So if you had read on into that paragraph, you know that that's not a real fairy. Or you probably didn't even have to read on to know that fairies aren't real. Or maybe you believe that fairies are real, but in this story, she's not a real fairy. So A is going to be out. B says to mock abracadabra's costume sarcastically. So the word veritable is not mocking it, and in his mind, he's actually thinking that this is a real fairy, so he's not mocking her at all. So B is out. And then C says to praise abracadabra's elaborate costume. So in that specific sentence, we talk a little bit about what she's wearing, but veritable is not describing her costume. It's talking about the fact that this kid actually thinks this is a real fairy. So C is not the answer. Then D says, indicate that the children believe that abracadabra was a real fairy. Yes, veritable means verified, real, truthful, and in his mind, this fairy was totally real. So D is definitely our possibility. Looking at E, it says, introduce a sense of wonder to the story. So this entire story is filled with wondrous things. The word veritable is not what is introducing a sense of wonder. So veritable is not introducing a sense of wonder, even though there is an overarching sense of wonder throughout the entire story. It's not coming from that one word. So in this case, the answer is D.